I'm the host, Perry Bacon. I'm honored to be joined by one of the guests we've been trying to book from the moment we started doing this show in August. A great politician, a great leader. I always look forward to hearing what she has to say. So, Senator Warren, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It is good to be with you.
I want to start. You gave a big speech yesterday about the Democratic Party, about where you wanted to go. And you used two terms that I want to define and talk about. The first was you used the phrase big tent. And you define big tent in a way you want to see the party of a big tent, and you define it in a way where you're sort of weary of a certain kind of big tent. So kind of tell people who didn't see the speech about your two views of a big tent and what kind of big tent you want to see for the party.
Okay. So remember that the kind of underlying thread of this whole speech is about how we win and about the importance of talking about where families are economically right now, the economic pressure that families are under. So the question is, what does a big tent look like? And there are folks within the Democratic Party who think that the big tent means that we put together kind of our economic plans and proposals with a very careful eye on the billionaires and other wealthy donors. So, yeah, we talk about how it's tough for working families, but we put up proposals that nibble around the edges, that are modest, that are simpatico to keeping the rich rich and everybody else struggling. In other words, replicating a rigged system.
Mhm.
The alternative vision of the Big Tent is that we say full throatedly, we understand the problem. The problem is a rigged system that keeps flowing more money to the top and less money to everybody else. We have concrete plans to fix it. And here they are. And here comes the best part, we're damn well willing to get in there and fight for them. And we're willing to fight for them, even if it offends other Democrats and Democratic donors. Those are two very different visions of the big tent. And my view is when the choice is between billionaires and everybody else, we win when we choose everybody else.
In other words, Elon Musk can join the Big Ten if he wants to pay taxes at the rate at a high rate and not destroy the government. But the tent is not going to be open to him for us to do what he wants.
Let me say what you're saying only slightly differently. Big tent is open. We're just not going to change our message
Okay.
for somebody who says, "Oh, but I could open my wallet and offer you millions of dollars." Nope. Our message is the right message for us, and we are committed to get in there and fight for it.
The other term you used was abundance, and you sort of again you gave there's a positive view of abundance and there's sort of a view of abundance we want to avoid. So talk about unpack that term and why it can be useful, but can obscure bad policies as well.
Okay. So abundance. What it means, or sometimes means, is just inefficiency and red tape, and boy, isn't that stupid. And I just want to say on this, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau should be the poster child on abundance because we took a bunch of tangled consumer regulations spread across 7 different agencies. Nobody was really effectively enforcing them, brought them all into one place. And here's the best part. We not only smoothed it out, we made them work so that families received almost more than $1 billion a year every year back from the CFPB, money the CFPB had collected because people had gotten cheated. So there it is. CFPB, it was abundance before abundance was hip. That's one way to
Right.
think about abundance. Get rid of kind of the tangle. But there's a second way, and that is to stop and think, why does law sometimes stay so tangled up? Why isn't it we can't seem to do any better? And now to pay attention to the role of giant corporations and billionaires, the moneyed interest in perpetuating the inefficiency. So, quick example on that. In most countries around the world, you can file your taxes online for free. Duh. I have fought for years to get free filing here in the United States. Instead, no, no, no. You got to go drop a few $100 with H&R Block or some other TurboTax, one of the tax folks, in order to pay your own taxes to your own federal government, right? So I push, I push, I push, and finally, the IRS, God bless them, they put together Free File and make it available. It's limited in its first kind of options when they put it out there. It is beloved. People say this is fabulous. It works terrifically. So what do the tax companies do? The minute Donald Trump gets elected to office, they swoop in and get the whole thing wiped out, zeroed out, will not be the law. So there's an example of, yes, we are quite inefficient as a country in terms of how ordinary folks file their taxes. But the reason for that inefficiency is it's corporations who figured out that those inefficiencies keep costs high for consumers and keep profits even higher for the corporations. So my pitch here is, if we want to talk about abundance and talk about where the wheels have come off and we need to make things work a little more smoothly, sure. But come on, let's take a look at how corporations, billionaires have used abundance as a screen
Hmm.
to say, oh, government is just too inefficient. You guys shouldn't be regulating. You shouldn't be trying to build anything. You shouldn't be investing anything. In other words, to promote their own economic agenda behind the screen of abundance, wearing the abundance t-shirt.
You gave us the policy ideas that I think a lot of people agree with. A lot of them came from your campaign that was so excellent, of course. But I want to ask about two things other Democrats are doing, just get a sense of it. One, and I'll ask both of them at the same time, is what can we learn? We probably aren't going to have a national free bus system, so, or maybe we should, but we're only going to have this. So what should we learn from the Mondani campaign? What should we take national from what he ran? And then two, the governor of California came out to us today and said he's fiercely opposed and going to try to kill the proposed wealth tax that's happening there. And I'd be curious what your response is to what he said.
Sure. So let's do Mamdani first. I think what we can learn from Mamdani is that you can come basically from nowhere. I mean,
Right.
not many
Literally.
people knew who he was.
Yeah.
And take down a political dynasty if you listen to people about their economic lives, if you listen to them about how expensive, in this case, it is to live in your city, how expensive it is to be able to raise kids, to be able to pay your rent, to be able to pay your groceries, and then come up with just a few, don't do them all at once, but a few concrete, measurable proposals that people can. I always think of it like trying on shoes. They can try that on in their minds and say, huh, that would be really helpful to me. Think of Zoran's free buses, universal child care, and some access to public grocery stores in places where there aren't any grocery
And the
stores.
rent freeze, of course. Yeah.
There you go. That's right. Pick and rent freeze. You're exactly right on the places that are eligible for that.
Yeah.
You got four things there. They're not complicated. Every consumer can say, I see how that would affect my life.
Okay.
And that was enough. I really want to make a point here. That was not only enough to get him across the finish line to win. It was enough to bring out tens of thousands of people to knock on doors for him, to show up at rallies for him, to talk to their neighbors about him. In other words, it's one thing to say, well, but you had a lot of ads. And so, no, he had to build that thing from scratch. He got enough people sharing the vision. And by the way, when people roll their eyes and say, oh, that's New York City, it's very
Yeah.
different.
Good.
Mikey Sherrill did the same thing
Yeah.
in New Jersey. And remember her two big things. She said, we're going to do childcare. And on day one, she had the most radical proposal of anybody. She said, I'm going to put a price cap on day one on utilities. Nobody's
Yes.
going to pay more on their utilities. She wins by 14 points. I think that's crucial. Look, My views on wealth tax are obviously well known since I was the one who started this. But the question really becomes, why not? Come on, most Americans get this. Um, we
Well,
have
to be fair, he's a Democrat. He's making this sort of technocratic argument that we'll lose more money than we'll make because billionaires will move. I want to make sure he's a fellow Democrat, so he says some things I agree with often. So is he wrong? Is he this wrong still?
So look, I always want to make the pitch here. The best way to do a wealth tax is to do a national wealth tax.
Okay.
And this is one of the pitches I made when I ran for president. We should be doing this nationally so that deciding to jump across the state border doesn't change your tax status or how much you're going to have to pay in taxes. In order to avoid it at a national level, you actually have to give up your U.S. citizenship
Mhm.
and forfeit your passport. And so I want to be fair about differences at the that one can talk about where you're trying to bring policies in. But the part I want to underscore 10 times over is we cannot back up from proposals like wealth tax or like universal childcare because it would mean an increase in taxes for the richest among us just because the donors don't like it, right? And people will always find another way to describe it. Nobody will ever say, hey, look, I'm doing this because I took a lot of money from the industry and that's what they want.
Right.
Nobody ever says that. But it really is important for Democrats to say, are we going to trim down our ambitions because we want to be really friendly to the people who are going to pitch nickels into our campaigns? Or do we recognize that we got to go in full force, all the way, full throated? I'm not stupid. I understand that money is important. And I don't believe in universal disarmament against the unilateral disarmament against the Republicans. But the reality here, Perry, is that if worrying about the donors keeps us from being bold, keeps us from not fighting, if that's what happens, then the money just ain't worth it. We
You
got,
support this, just to be clear, in California?
that's right.
Okay.
We need to be in the fight because we need to establish that trust with working people that we are willing not just to do what's easy and everybody agrees to, but to do things that there are going to be some rich people who aren't going to like it. And the answer has to be that we are still committed to do it. Damn it. We are the Democrats. We are the party that brought America Social Security and the 40-hour work week and overtime and unions, real power and protection for unions. We're the party that did unemployment insurance. We're the party that did homes for returning veterans and homes for first-time home buyers, that did Medicare. We are the party that did the Affordable Care Act and tried to get coverage for everybody in this country. We need to be willing. Every one of those was, by the way, a hard fight against the Republicans. They voted no on all that stuff. We need to be the party that is willing to stand up, willing to be bold, and willing to fight for what families need to unrig this system.
I know you got to go. I know, but you're the center with a plan. So I do want to ask. People are asking all over the country about ICE. Like, what is there? Do you have you thought much about what we should do about ICE? People are outraged by what they're seeing. I'm outraged by what I'm seeing. Probably given some thought. Maybe you may have a full fledged proposal. But what are your set of thoughts about how we can make ICE differently, or if ICE should exist in the first place?
We need we need to reorganize our whole approach to immigration. And yes, we need to enforce our immigration laws. Yes, we need to enforce our borders, but it needs to be done differently. And we need more restraints over people who are going into our neighborhoods. I always think about the fact that you look back to Donald Trump and his run up to the 2024 election, he promised two things: that he would lower costs on day one, and he would keep us safe. He was going to make this a safer country. You remember that,
Of
right?
course.
Well, lower costs on day one, cost of housing is up, cost of healthcare is up, cost of utilities is up, 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 up. Cost of groceries is up because of his policies. Safe? Nobody is safer because of ICE invading our communities now, throwing people down on the sidewalk, shooting when civilians are around. He is not making America more affordable, and he's not making America safer. And it is up to us to put those plans out there and to show we're willing to fight for them.
Senator, great to see you. Thank you for
Good to
joining me.
see you. You take
Bye.
care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.